Hello and welcome. I'm your host, author Ryan M. Oliver, and this is the Mighty Books Podcast. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Mighty Books Podcast. Today with me, I have Lindsey Larsen. So real quick about Lindsey, she earned her doctorate in occupational therapy from Creighton University. Am I saying that right, Lindsey?
Creighton, yes.
Creighton. Okay. Creighton University in 2007, and as a certified autism spectrum disorder clinical specialist. She's also the mother of two amazing daughters, an award-winning author, a homeschool educator, a military wife, and if that's not enough, a self-publishing and parenting coach. Lindsey, you're a busy person.
I do like to stay busy. Yes.
That's good. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. It's been a long time coming. I know we connected a few months ago, so this is nice to finally see connect a face with the name and everything. And I have all sorts of questions for you. I love this. I love children's books. Love children's books. I've got young kids of my own, and they love to read children's books. So, first off, what is the title of your book?
It's Meeting Exceptional Friends.
And what is that about?
Well, I decided I actually never intended to be a children's book author, but I have a daughter with disabilities, and she's now 13, but we're military, like you mentioned. We move around a lot. We meet a lot of people, have a lot of experiences. And one of the things I kept noticing over and over again was some of the responses that we were receiving out in the real world when we were out at a playground or even at a store or the zoo or anything like that. And I was realizing that people were still unsure how to engage with us, being that I have a child with disabilities.
Yeah.
And no matter where I lived, this kind of same thing was happening. Children would ask questions, and sometimes parents would shush their child, or I would see people actively avoid us. Just kind of turn and walk right away, like we're just not even gonna do this today. We don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And enough of those experiences, I was thinking, gosh, how can I get a message into the world about, it's okay, first of all, for young children to have questions. They
Yeah.
have questions about everything. That's one of the most beautiful things about children, right? And so how can we educate these children, but also how can I get the message to the parents?
Yes.
And that's where I kind of settled on a children's book for young kids that they'd be, sitting down at night reading together and, pull this book out amongst their favorites, just mix it in there and have a good discussion about disabilities and the differences that you see with people. So this book is essentially what we encountered. It's kind of the ideal of what we would hope our interactions would be like, I guess. Somebody has told me it's inclusion perfectly captured. So these children, there's no main character, but it's different children on a playground setting, just like we often would be. And these children ask questions in order to just understand their new friend. And so they can go on to play together.
Okay.
And that's what it kind of shows over and over. And the book is intended to give children plenty of opportunities to ask their parents or whoever's reading them this book about children with disabilities, about differences, how we handle these situations. And then there, even some questions in the back to kind of spark some more conversation.
Yeah. Now, with as someone who is a parent to someone with a child with disabilities, I mean, would you like people to approach your child as just a normal kid?
Yeah, that is one piece of it. But what the book also kind of shows is sometimes questions are necessary in
Yeah.
order to know how to interact. One of the characters, of course, is using a communication device. And if somebody has never met someone that's using a device to communicate,
Yeah.
it's fair, right? That an adult or a child would have some questions. And then once they understand, which for a child, it happens very quickly, and that's beautiful. They're just like, oh, okay, let's move on. They move on and can interact. So yes, I would say, come on over. And if there's questions, the parents, of course, I'm a little bit more extroverted. So I think that there are people with different opinions and different views on this, and I appreciate that. But the parents that I've spoken to, they very much are like, we just want kids to know it's okay, come on over,
Yeah.
let's play together. If you have a question, let's talk about it.
Yep.
So we can play together.
Yeah. It's also open up that dialogue for your kids to be okay to ask questions. So I mean,
Yeah.
I used to work in the public schools, and so I mean, gosh, kids were almost brutally honest with their questions. And I mean,
Right.
I can't say it's to a fault, but I mean, you get older and you get told you can't ask that question, you can't ask that question. Yeah, there's some inappropriate ones, but honestly, it's kind of honesty is the best policy. Honesty is faster. Sounds
Right.
sounds kind of strange, but if you're curious about something, it destroys the whole beating around the bush thing. And people
Right.
usually will connect a lot better. It doesn't matter where you come from, if you have a disability or a condition or something. A lot of us are very similar in how we, approach the world anyway. So kids just do it faster. And I think honestly,
They
half the time
do.
it's hilarious when they ask questions like, I would never have asked that. But yeah, what's the answer to that question he asked you?
Right. Yeah. I
Burning
homeschool my
question.
kids. So the questions that come up on a daily, I'm like, I am so glad I have the internet to help me because there is just so many questions that they have. And, that's how they learn. I do have to say that I do think that the conversation regarding disabilities should evolve as children get older.
Oh
My
yeah.
book is targeted, for preschool, kindergarten age. And I do think, it is different as you become older. We should be more aware of this at that point because
Yeah.
you've read this book, because you've
Yeah.
already talked about it.
Right.
And then the way, we should be, as we grow, changing the way we interact with the world.
Yeah. So would you say it's more like black and white when you're younger? Because I know for the kids, it's usually yes, no, good, bad. You can do this, you can't do this. I know I've tried to
Yeah.
do the gray area with my kids, and they're 9 and 7 now. So gray area for my oldest is starting to become like you can do that in this situation, but not this situation. My youngest is still very, but you said I couldn't do that here. I can't do that here either. No, no, you can. What? It's that kind of
Right.
abstract, knowledge they start to
Right.
learn as they get older, and so it's very
And
black
that's
and white right now.
and that is definitely why in this book you won't even see the word disability except on the back, which is for the parents to read. And we use the word differences because for children that age, I don't expect that they can fully comprehend differences that are related to disabilities, or any all the possibilities of differences that humans can have.
Yeah,
So it's truly a book about differences, but I made it specifically towards the disability community because that's what I'm living and experiencing.
that's awesome. And is it multiple? Is it it's various disabilities too?
Yes, there's
Okay.
visible and invisible. So it's a little introduction there too, that
Yeah.
even I still see a lot of adults, as a society, we need to understand invisible disabilities more than I think we do collectively.
No, totally. Well, I think nowadays, at least, it feels like it's getting a little, I can't say better, but people are becoming more just kind of aware and okay with the fact like you see this person, he looks perfectly normal, but you don't know what he or she is battling. You don't know what
Mhm.
kind of thing he's dealing with and conditions. And I think that mental health, that kind of thing is coming out more
Yeah,
and more. It used to be a stigma with that kind of thing, and now I think with
right.
that, and then hopefully it's boiling over, I would say in a good way, to others of various disabilities or conditions, where people are like, yeah, I give them some grace or whatever. If, oh, okay, let's ask some, let's ask some questions here and figure out how we can, breach that difference gap. But
Right.
yeah, now I'm curious. I want to know because I used to work with autistic students. What got you working with your daughter? The reason why you got started working and became a clinical specialist?
Well, I became an OT before I had children, and people just think that that's kind of crazy that I happened to go into a field. And then my daughter had a massive stroke as an infant and has just a lot of medical conditions and disabilities as a result of that. And she also has autism, so not probably
Oh,
unrelated,
okay,
to the stroke.
sure.
So we have a lot, and so I did go and get the certification for autism because of what we were seeing with her. And she's interesting too because she's one of the kiddos that is diagnosed later in life because she had it's be very uncommon that she had all these other medical conditions, and then also, but that happens, that
It
again,
does.
that can
Yeah, it
happen in
does.
life. So she was diagnosed later in life. for the longest time, it was just like, well, it's probably just all a part of this massive stroke. And that, and labels to me aren't important. What's important is people get diagnosed if they need it in order to be able to get proper IEPs in school or to qualify for the Individuals with Disabilities Act and be able to utilize that in whatever way they need to be able to fully participate in life.
Yes. Yes. I'm curious because I've heard, I haven't done a lot of research on autism, but I used to work with many autistic children, and there are so many degrees of activity and what they could and couldn't do or struggled with and did really well at. What I found with, or at least heard, that it's easier because I think they did more research way back when autism kind of came into purview, that boys were easier to diagnose with autism than girls. Is that something that is something as a misnomer? Is that accurate? I have no idea. I'm
Honestly, I
curious.
don't know. I don't diagnose.
Okay.
So I don't know the answer to that, but I have to be careful what I say here. But in the past, there
Uh-huh.
were cues that were more common in boys than in girls. But I think what we've come to realize is that diagnosis is such a huge spectrum that things that we didn't initially think were related to an autism diagnosis truly are.
Yeah.
And those are some of the things that are more commonly found in girls.
Oh, okay.
So, but I don't diagnose.
No, that's
That
fine.
is not my field.
That's fine. I'm like, I have not talked to someone who was a specialist in autism before. So I was like, I got to ask this question. So
Yeah.
I've always related to, I had a couple of kiddos who would have just a meltdown because something went sideways. Their schedule was off. Very, very routine is what, at least the kids I worked with were very routine. They were off their schedule by such amount or something threw them off. um who put it to me this way, I can't remember who it was, but basically their brains are just kind of trying to figure out what way is up. And I always equate that to with when they're freaking out, having an episode or just a moment. And have you ever gone water tubing before
Yes.
and you get thrown off? Every time I did, I would start swimming in the wrong direction. The only reason I was getting floated up to the surface because I had a life jacket on. And that's what I've always equated it to. Like their brains just didn't disconnect them to earth. That's why a lot of like the weighted vests and the jackets and like that kind of thing help them kind of come back to, oh, there's air. Okay, we're good now. I can take a breath. I have no idea if that's even close to accurate. That was just how I connected to understand what they were going through.
I
Uh,
think it's I think it's great when anybody takes time to try and stop and think about what others are experiencing, because I think that is exactly how we can go out into the world and be more understanding of all the people that we meet and all the differences. My daughter, for instance, really struggles in busy, commotion filled environments.
yes.
And so of course we have some tools that we use, but I really have to be able to I have to keep an eye and watch and see, because you can start to see sometimes where she's coming to her limits. She's learned some tools and techniques that we use all the time, but I still have to be kind of on guard and watch, because before you know it, you might just hit that level. You might tumble off your tube and we're we've kind of flipped upside down. So we
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
to watch for that, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's not only just good for being a good, specialist, it's good being a good parent. I mean, you can have kids who don't have autism who have a meltdown. I mean, my kids did. They don't have autism, but oh my gosh, the meltdowns were catastrophic sometimes. Like, why are you freaking out like this? And then you have to think back, okay, they haven't had food in a while. They're tired. They were sad about this or angry about that. Okay, now
Mhm.
we're starting to see the issues. It's always that when people get more comfortable with asking the word why or how, they get that under, you can do a snap judgment of somebody. And I found, I mean, I still do it. I try not to, but I still do it. It's a human thing. We snap, well, why are the person behaving this way in this environment? No, stop and ask why are they at why might they be, doing this or doing that?
Why
And
might that be challenging for them? Yes.
yeah, why might that be challenging? That's a great way to put it. Why that might be challenging for them? Well, maybe, and you can go down the rabbit hole on that one. But when you
Hmm.
start to kind of step back and release the judgment and ask those questions, even internally, or if you're able to directly to the person or to a parent, um, there's understanding, and then usually grace follows, hopefully. grace will
Right.
follow from that. So I'm curious. I love children's books, like I was saying. So I kind of want to get down just the writing process. How long did it take you when you decided I'm going to write this? How long did it take you to actually jam it out?
I had been thinking about it. It was really written in my head. But I just so it was written in my head just over the course of years, honestly.
Yeah.
But I had to decide. I was really nervous about the fact that I'm writing this story and there's no main character. I mean, it has it. I was just like, does this work? Like, what I'm doing is not like what I read my own children. So does this work?
Yeah.
And so finally, I just decided, well, I'm just going to put it down on paper. And then I sent it to teacher friends, parent friends, therapist friends. And I was just like, yeah, what do you think? And they all just came back saying, you just have to do this. You
Yeah.
have to do it.
Heck yeah.
And I was like, all right. I mean, there's no harm in it, certainly.
No,
So,
there's no harm in it at all.
um,
I was thinking it would be a great, absolutely wonderful for teachers. My wife teaches kindergarten, and oh my goodness, I mean, like I said before, kids are just brutally honest with questions and whatnot, and that's actually great. So, having a book like that to present the kids, this is if you see something like this, and it's how you might want to ask questions, approach it delicately, or how, in however you would do it for young kiddos. It
yeah.
it sounds kind of weird, but I equate it to my wife does this every year for her kids, and it's to help with management. Is she reads a story on kids tooting. How do you approach someone who does that in a classroom while the teacher's teaching, everyone's reading quietly or working quietly? How do you approach that? And so it's like, why would you need to have a book on that? She goes, because it's the most disruptive thing in the classroom any point in time. And I just laugh. I'm like, oh my God, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Even to this day, adults laugh at this. It's like, so it's disruptive. So if you have someone that breaks something down, like approaching and making new friends, or maybe someone who needs a little extra help, physically, or can't process something as quickly, or maybe has more challenges with something, it will get the kids thinking about how to approach kiddos like that they would maybe never would have talked to in the past. So
Right.
kind of a how-to,
Yeah.
like for little guys.
Absolutely. And of course, in the school setting too, you might have a new student join class or something. And at that point is probably not the best. To have this book would be good. The thing is you can't point out students and say, Johnny has this, Susie. Obviously, we cannot do that. We can't do that in the schools. But
No.
having a book like this opens it up to the fact that we all have these differences.
Yes.
And so that's why I think it's so good to use a tool like this in school, because you are bound to have students in your classroom that have differences. And then you've already kind of covered it. You've already covered your basis. And when a new
Yeah.
student joins the class, and if they have a difference, I mean, I've had some parents contact me and say, now instead of my child pointing, and sometimes they still point too, because kids do point,
They do.
but they take the question back to their parent, and they're just like, remember that book we read? Remember that book that had that kid in it? So then the parent is having that conversation, and they can turn to them and say, yes, I do remember that we all have differences. And
Yeah.
so yes, you can see that there's an individual over there that has a difference, and yes, so do you. And you can talk about it that way, instead of that uncomfortable, oh my gosh, my kid just said this so loud in front of so many people and
Oh
I'm
yeah.
embarrassed. It's
Yes.
we don't want children to think that there's anything bad about discussing differences, because then they learn to
No.
avoid people. And I have that, having a child with disabilities, I didn't have any disabilities growing up myself, and I was always very extroverted. It was very easy for me to communicate with anybody and everybody, I thought.
Yeah.
And seeing people actively avoid us, it was really difficult to
Yeah.
realize that this happens to children when they
Oh,
that they become avoided, when children think there must be something wrong. There's a reason why my parents told me not to ask that, or don't go over there.
yeah.
So instead they take that to mean, or some kids could take that to mean, like, I just need to to avoid this
Yeah.
altogether.
Yeah, you almost vilify the fact that it's someone has a difference. It's like, no, 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 that's not how we should be doing this. We need to look at this going, yeah, they're a little different. So what? Just go over and talk to them. And I gotta hand it to my youngest. He is blind to any differences. Like he might go, why is that person, like he'll go, Dad, why is this person, wearing this, or in a wheelchair or something? I'm like, well, because his legs don't work or this and that. Oh, okay. And goes over and chit chats, and he'll even go over and he will just ask him, why are you sitting in this? Why are you doing this? Like, oh, it's because of this. Oh, cool. I'd like to have one of those. It does not
Yes,
compute with him that this is going to be
exactly.
offensive in any way. And while
Yeah.
my wife and I are mortified, we're like, oh my God, what is he doing?
Don't be,
Yeah, exactly.
no, don't. We have to
And
train ourselves to not be.
so the book is really good for kids, but like you said, it's also great for adults to kind of go, oh, I guess I can ask these questions and not seem like a jerk or something, like what being invasive or anything like that. It's honesty. Honesty is the best policy. Honesty is faster. And I've always found people think it's gonna be offensive, and then the people who actually are asked, was that offensive? Like, no, that was actually great. I want to share why I am the way I am. It's okay. It means I can be accepted by you or by a group, and we're social animals. We want to talk to other people. So
Right.
I'm always curious with children's books. It's like it's a two-part process. Obviously, you're writing it, and then you're telling a story visually, which is a completely different thing, because you can write it visually, you can write it with wonderful language, but when you are doing kids books, they need to have the illustrations. So can you tell me about how you worked with the illustrator? Maybe tell me about the illustrator a little bit, how that process worked.
Yeah, that was it was challenging. My illustrator is actually from Ukraine and lives in Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
Yes, which is part of the reason I got my husband on board with this project.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was, yeah, when I said, I'm going to look for an illustrator, and I'm going to look for an illustrator in Ukraine, because then our funds are going towards
Oh,
somebody
okay.
in
Oh,
Ukraine,
yeah.
and that just was something that was important to us. And so we had the language barrier, using just software technology to communicate, uh, translating emails, well, essentially through a platform.
Right.
So it was challenging, and I am a horrible illustrator. My level of artistic abilities stopped about kindergarten age. So, um,
Stick figures,
so
maybe.
I
Stick figures,
yeah,
maybe.
luckily she is absolutely amazing and wonderful, and so she had all these spreads, and I was able to honestly cut and paste and show like how I wanted the characters interacting, that she already drew, so I didn't have to try and sit there and create these characters and scenes, and just kind of shifted things around, and was able to say, actually, this, I want to more in the beginning of the book, and this would be great back here, and we shifted things around that way, and it worked well. But I am going to try and be doing a coloring book with her here. So
Oh,
this time. I'm trying to not give her as much work, and to put it down on paper more, what I'm envisioning. The coloring book would have the characters in the book, and it would just be showing lots of different ways to include children in play. That really, kids are very creative, and they can come up with a lot of these. But again, it might also show parents in the coloring book how could we engage this child in an activity.
yeah.
So it's just going to be a lot of inclusive play, like at the playground, type of pictures, along with animals and stuff that are fun to color.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, that's just a great, and also getting it into places like schools and preschools and libraries. That's going to be so helpful too. I mean, I know my wife probably eat that up, go, yep, we're going to use that. And all the teachers like, yep, we're going to use that. I mean, honestly, you could probably, she works at a dual language school. So half is teaching Spanish and English, and then one half just teaching English. You could even have it translated if you really wanted to, depending on what kind of school systems you guys have around the area. But you could do that too. Something I was like, we have half the library is Spanish, and the other half is English, and
Wow.
kind of interesting. Just an
Yeah.
idea, something to think
Yeah.
about. I don't know, because where you guys are in Washington, yeah.
Sorry, no, Colorado right now.
Colorado. Okay. I
Yeah.
thought you were Washington. I've been talking to a lot of people lately, and anyway, getting back
Yeah.
on the interview circuit, talking to everybody. But yeah, that's so cool. Now, did you guys have, for you and your illustrator, did you have any kind of contract you had to write up or anything like that? You did? Okay.
We did.
Okay.
Yep. We wrote up a contract and we just kind of, when she completed certain pieces, we, that's when that, I would pay her for her services and it worked really well because she was so understanding. She knew right off the bat that this was my first time writing a
Yeah.
children's book. So she knew she was going to have to help me out in terms of how we were going to make this all, get it to completion, I guess. But she was extremely helpful and was, when there was obviously I couldn't just explain always what I was wanting, like on the page, she would do what she thought I was saying, and then we would just rework it. And so just a lot of back and forth, but we got it done. And so
That's awesome.
so
Uh,
it's great.
oh yeah, yeah. I've always, and I was so she had done other children's books in the
Yes.
past. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Yeah, that helps a lot. That helps a
Yes.
lot. If
So
someone
she
comes
was
in,
guiding me through the illustration process.
that's
Yeah.
nice. That's really cool. Yeah, I've met a couple who came in together, both never doing it before, and navigating that was a beast.
I
Trying to
bet.
make figure out where both parties are protected and both parties feel like they're honored with their services and what they were doing. And so I'm glad that
Sure.
worked out very nicely. So, did you say you would do another book if you wanted to? Is that the goal? Is to do another one, or you want to
Yeah,
just
I would like to
promote
do.
this
I
one?
do. I have plenty of ideas for
Oh
a
yeah.
book. So yeah, I got to get this coloring book done to go with this book. But then I would love to do a book on learning disabilities and one on sensory processing issues.
Oh
I still feel like there's a lot of parents that aren't fully understanding some of their child's sensory needs, and I mean that without needing a diagnosis of autism or sensory processing disorder. I mean, we have sensory needs as
yeah.
humans, and so I would like to kind of showcase that through a children's book. And again, hopefully some parents reading this book being like, oh, I didn't quite understand why my kid does this, but this
Uh-huh.
kind of helps me
Uh-huh.
understand that there's, some needs that they're showing through their actions that they need met.
Yeah.
So
Now I'm curious, just as a nature thing, have you always naturally been really good at just communicating with kids and, like, explaining things at their level?
maybe.
Maybe.
I mean, I have had people tell me things to that effect. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I guess so.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. I'm just curious because I have my wife and I can't say we're polar opposites. We both got into education, to some degree, but I'm teaching adults. She teaches young kiddos. And it's funny,
okay.
when the boys were getting older, they'd ask some absurdly, like, existential, very deep questions. And of course, I go into the detail and the science and the history of it. And I'm geeking out over the question they're asking. I'm like, wow, they're asking these great questions. And she looks at me like, what are you doing? They don't know half the words you're talking about. So she'll actually explain it in a very beautifully simple way. She's a Pied Piper with kids. It's
Okay.
ridiculous. She'll start whistling and they'll do everything she wants. It's a superpower. I can't lie about it. But and they'll go, oh mom, that makes sense. And they run away. And I'm like, how did you do that? She goes, you just got to get to their level and use words they know and
Right.
slowly build up to the vocabulary you're using. Like, this is why I
Yeah.
teach adults and you teach kids.
Yes, very true, very true. And
Yeah,
that is something. We read a lot of books. We
yeah,
love books. And my kids are even older now, but picture books are still such a huge part
oh
of our
yeah,
life. And it's interesting when my daughter who's 9 will even say something like, not to criticize anyone's book. I don't mean that, but sometimes she will point out, like, this book was designed for someone a little bit older. And she will say things like that. And I'm like, I agree. I agree. But look, here we are. And so I'm like, maybe it was for us, Charlotte. We're looking at picture books with my 9 and 13-year-old, and I
yeah,
said, so maybe it was more for us.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I
So,
love when they start realizing
yeah.
that. It's so
Hmm.
fun. You can just see that light bulb of, oh, they get it now.
Yeah.
Oh, they
Yeah.
get it now. That's amazing. Now, you got a doctorate in OT, occupational therapy. What made you decide to go all the way to get your PhD? Because that's a lot of schooling. I did four
It's a
years.
clinical doctorate. It's a clinical doctorate.
Oh, okay. What's the difference?
It's 4 years, but it's not a PhD.
Oh, okay.
So it's a clinical doctorate, like a pharmacist has a doctorate, physical therapist, MD, medical
Oh,
doctors have a
okay.
clinical doctorate. So it's not a PhD. But it's 4 years of school to get the OT doctorate.
Oh, okay.
Um, and really, I at that point in my life, I wanted to help people, and I
Sure.
wanted to work with. I kind of was all over the board. Actually, I didn't want to be stuck doing one thing all the time.
Yeah.
And what I realized was, as an OT, you can work with kids in the school system, you can work in a nursing home, you can work at a hospital doing rehab. So I started. When I
Man.
started, I was working on a spinal cord injury unit. So I was fitting people with their wheelchairs. We were learning how to transfer, get in and out of bed, doing all those things after having a spinal cord injury. You can go into people's homes and you can adapt their homes to make their homes work better for them. So I was like, I will never be bored with this job. And that's so, as you can see, I don't like to be bored. So I just always stay busy. So even though I'm not working
Yeah.
outside the home at the moment, because I'm homeschooling my kids, I'm trying to do some parenting coaching and self-publishing coaching now on the side too, because I took detailed notes of everything as I went through this process. Like, I'm going to help somebody do this a lot faster than what it took me to work through
Heck
all this
yeah.
information.
Wow. So when your girls get to be a certain age, maybe I don't know, high school or older, I don't know what the plan is, but will you go back and do OT work, or you're hoping that your self-publishing and parenting coaching will be enough to sustain you to just keep working that way?
I am open to all ideas
Cool.
because my daughter does have moderate intellectual disability.
Okay.
So I would love the idea of being able to include her. So part of me thinks, how fun would it be for us to, maybe, if she enjoys it also, if I have some more books by then, I could see her sitting and doing book readings, and we could be at farmers markets selling books, and she could be a part of the buying and selling process, and I could see that being something we could really enjoy. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of open to it, but I really like the idea of having multiple things going on.
Yeah.
This has really opened my mind to the idea that I can still homeschool my kids now that they're a little bit older. They can do some of their work independently.
Nice.
That leaves some time for myself, and adding in some of these other passions of mine has been really great. And it's nice to know that we have so many options now. I don't have to just choose working full time outside the home or staying
Yeah.
home, but then not having any sort of career. So
Yeah, no, yeah, you can have a career and be stay at home pretty fluidly now. It's kind of nice. I mean, but COVID had a lot of bad things happen, but man, it when it finally calmed down enough where people were going back to work and doing things, it really opened the doors for people who wouldn't normally be doing that kind of work. I know for a family member of mine who has struggles with anxiety, and going outside the home is very challenging. Working around a large group of people is very challenging. So this person was able to get a work from home and make a living and be able to manage themselves and actually be very happy doing it. So it's like, and that would not have happened most likely without COVID or anything like that. But the fact that you have so many options because we can do things virtually over the phone, oh my gosh, it's so nice. And you can take care of your family at the same time. It's like this is exactly what this was made for. This is exactly
yeah,
what Zoom and
right.
all that was made for. And I
Yes.
mean, how cool would that be for your daughter and you just to have as much time together working on, stuff you went to school for? She can speak from experiences. You guys can do all sorts of events together. I mean,
Right.
that's just a really cool thing that she's never gonna forget. Like you won't forget either. But oh, it's a very special thing
Yeah.
to do. About your self publishing and your parenting coaching, how long have you been doing that for?
I just started that about a year ago,
Okay.
the parenting. And then I've just tacked on. I was like, well, I have all the Calendly and the Zoom, and I
Yeah.
have my detailed notes. I've got my links to, all the videos to watch, and
Yeah.
all my tips and things that I've learned. So I was like, I would be happy to help others work through this process and know the different options that I did have someone help me.
Yeah.
But on top of that, I did find that it's important to have, I think, a coach who is still actively involved in the self-publishing. Mine was not. And I think everything must be moving very quickly because I was finding out a lot. I would go back to her and be like, I found out this, I found out this. And so meanwhile, I'm writing it all down like, okay, I do think for anybody that's looking into self-publishing and you do want some help along the way, definitely consider somebody who is actively in the world because it must just be changing extremely quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you want to know all the options, and I would definitely consider somebody who's is in the process as well.
That's great. Yeah. The coaches have exploded. The need for coaches has exploded since I started doing my books back in 2020. Because I got a publishing coach to help me get my books off the ground because I had no idea how to navigate this.
Right.
And you go online and there's so many scams and people can dupe you
Yeah.
and just steal your money and time, and it just frustrate the dickens out of you. So, finding someone you can trust who's in it to see you succeed, who's done it before. And I love that you put in who is currently I'm going to say, in working. It is so
Mm-hmm.
valuable, especially in this day and age. The information changes every 6 months, if not sooner than that. It
Yeah.
evolves so much. I mean, I was looking back just from I told you we just got done moving, so I was going through all my books that have self-publishing, traditional publishing, whatever, all the things that you look into when you're writing a book. All that stuff was so antiquated, and it was only like, okay, 8 years ago, 6 years ago, it was all antiquated because there's so many new things now that are just, they're extinct. It doesn't matter
Right.
anymore. They're not relevant. So
Yeah. And that was all, that was new to me. I didn't quite
yeah,
realize how fast everything is moving. So, and I think it's just going to keep continuing down that path. So
yeah. Oh, it totally will. So yeah, I highly recommend it. And anytime someone's asking about publishing coaches, I will definitely steer them in your direction if you're willing to. I know you
thank
taking
you.
fiction, nonfiction. Does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter, but I do only take like one or two people on at a time just
It's
because I
fine.
am trying to
Yeah.
balance that the life with the kids.
Yeah. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. Just having a family is a lot of work, and then it's good work, but it's just time, and you want to make sure you're dedicating to it. But yeah, I get that. Yeah, myself, I'm trying to get myself in the coaching business also because I really love just the creative process with those who doing fiction, and then I love just helping people navigate to create something. I mean, you had a mind baby essentially is what books are. Like, I had this idea and it's right here, this is amazing, and nurture it to hopefully do really well. And speaking of really well, yours won an award. Can you tell me how that
Oh,
happened and where that
yeah.
happened and when?
Yeah. Well, I actually just found out it won another award. I actually
Oh,
only applied for two
congrats.
awards and I won two awards. So
Hey,
I,
100%.
I don't know. I don't know, but I really, I wasn't even convinced. Like I said, when I put this book into the world, I wasn't even sure if parents would understand, like, why does this exist? Although I am finding as everyone reads it, they're like, I'm so glad that this exists. We just had a situation with my kiddo and
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do. So I am understanding
Awesome.
now that other parents do understand the need for this book. Teachers seem to really understand the need for this book.
Uh-huh.
But I really thought book judge, like judges that I mean, I'm like, this is no literary masterpiece. Like, this is an educational tool. And so I was like, I don't know about this award business, but I won the gold for the Nautilus Book Award. And they have their pillars. I sorry, I don't have that information in front of me, but
That's okay.
social change is one of their pillars. So I
Oh.
decided, so it's books that are specifically on like environmental awareness of how we're treating the environment, social change. They have, you can look into those different pillars if you'd like. And so my book fit into that. So I was
Okay.
like, okay, well, this award is a little bit more focused on how we're going to change this world for the better. So, which I feel like my book fell into that. So I was pleasantly surprised that it won. There's only 4 children's picture book categories. fiction, nonfiction, ages 2 to 6 and 6 to 9, I think. And
Okay.
so my one for fiction, ages 2 to 6.
Okay.
And then the reader's favorite just came out, and I won a bronze for children's educational book
Awesome.
in that. So I was very excited and had
So cool.
it gave me a boost of confidence, I guess you could say, that I, what I'm putting out into the world is worthwhile.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely it's absolutely worthwhile. You got to do it. And I mean, you just got to do that to help move things along. I mean, we get stuck in these mindsets for a while, and then sometimes people ask those prying questions, and we got to know, why are we doing this? We can be doing it better. How can we do it better? And we have tools like the book you have or you created, so to hopefully help that move along and make there be a little less suffering, a little more understanding. Now, real just random question I had. So you said you won the 2 to 6 year,
Ages 2 to 6.
ages 2 to 6.
Mm-hmm.
Would you ever take your book and modify it for an older group of kids?
That's a great question. That's what my book says, by the way. That's a great question over and
Oh,
over. But that is a great question. I've thought about that because I keep talking about how this conversation should evolve. And so I have considered that. And then it's funny that you mentioned your wife, because I was like, but does my brain just always go down to this level? Like, can I do it right for
you
the
could.
other ages? Like, I'm really good at coming down to this level. So that might, maybe I would need someone in between you and your wife
Yeah.
that can kind of say, yes, in fact, this would be the appropriate way to adjust your book for this audience.
The
But I have thought about it.
yeah, the how does she put it? The appropriate, developmentally appropriate. That's
Yes,
that's the key word there she
exactly.
uses all the time. This is not developmentally
Yeah,
appropriate for these kids. I'm like,
right,
what is? Because I don't know. I don't
right.
know.
Yes,
I stopped figuring that out years ago. I could not. I I tried. The boys
yeah,
have great vocabulary because I don't use layman's. I try to, but their vocabulary started to startle me a little bit. I'm like, dang, they know how to use 4 syllable words now. But this is great. So
yeah,
having people who can go between both is awesome. I would say if you are developing into the next age group, and heck, you probably could have it from that to teenage all the way up to adult too, if you really, really wanted to. And I would say just go talk to teachers who have lived in that age group for how long ago.
right,
Is this appropriate? Is this make
right.
sense? Is this talking too kiddie? Is this talking not kiddie enough? And and I think you could do all sorts of stuff with that. It's limitless, I think. People are going to want to get copies of this. Where can they go get copies of your wonderful book?
Well, it's all over the place. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the major online retailers. And for those who like to support their local bookstore, it is distributed by Ingram. So
Good.
a lot of bookstores can order it for you. So you can order through your local bookstore too, and then pick it up when it comes in. I'm trying to get into more libraries, but it's an uphill battle.
It is.
But it is in some libraries now, thankfully, and it's in some bookstores. So the more people go out there and request it, the more it will be out there. So definitely, if you want to read it and you want to read it for free, by all means, go to your public library and put in a request through the librarian there.
Yeah.
Lots of times you can do that right online, and
Mhm.
they can order it as well. So Amazon's probably the most common place people are going. You can also get autographed copies on my website,
Ooh,
lindsey-larsen.com.
do that.
Yeah. So that's fun. I can personalize it that way.
I love
Send
doing
you
that.
send you some bookmarks and stuff with it too. So
Yeah. Kids love
yeah,
bookmarks. Adults love bookmarks. I love
right.
bookmarks. I don't know
I
about it. I
always need
can't.
more bookmarks.
I do. I do. There was a bookstore clerk. Actually, no, he owned the business, and he was saying that someone said, "No, you need more bookmarks, like, or you need less bookmarks." He goes, "No, no, no, no. You need more books to hold the bookmark." So I'm like, "Oh, you should
Right.
put that as a slogan or something."
That's right.
And I'm like, "There you go. We all need just more books."
Right.
They're very heavy to move, though. I'll tell you that right now.
Yes. Yes.
Well, Lindsey, thank you so much. This has been awesome. I've learned a little bit about yourself, and hopefully people listening in will go take a look at your book. And if you got little kiddos or you work with kids, you can use this as a good story time Storytime read to help just include everyone who struggles with any kind of disability or has a difference. It just helps us, even those people, those adults in the world who are trying to learn how to navigate the waters too, how to approach everybody with as much integrity and love as we can. So I think you're doing some good work here. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. And when you do get more and more books out, I'd love to talk to you again about those. I think that'd be cool to revisit and see what you're up to, how your coaching has just exploded because you're just so darn busy with your coaching. And your kids are all grown and doing all sorts of cool things too with you. So I'd love to, reach out and do another interview in the future, a year or so, maybe longer. We'll
That would
see
be
what
great.
happens. Cool.
I look forward to it.
All right, awesome. All right, guys. I really hope you enjoy this. Go out, get her book, read it a lot to a lot of wonderful little kids and teach them a thing or two. Maybe you'll learn a thing or two too. All right. And as always, stay mighty and keep reading. Are you an author? Do you know someone who is? If so, then message me, Ryan Oliver, at ryanmoliver.com to set up a free appointment to discuss being showcased on the Mighty Books podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the Mighty Books YouTube channel and share the link to this and more episodes with your friends and family. Thanks for listening. So long for now. Stay mighty and keep reading.